Amang, Charlie Smith, Jong Benji, Georgia Strait. I'm Charlie Smith, editor of the Georgia Strait, and I'm very happy to be back for another week with WOW TV. I'm going to start this week's show with a discussion of the Vancouver real estate market. And one of the bigger stories over the week was the sale of commercial properties at the former Olympic Village, which is now called the Village on False Creek. And if you've been down to the Olympic Village, you would see there's a Terra Breads, there's all sorts of shops, London Drugs, there's a TD Canada Trust branch. But when the Olympic Village was built, the city stepped in as the lender and was on the hook for a massive amount of money, $700, $800 million. And over time, they've been recovering that money as properties have been sold. And this sale for $45 million to First Capital Realty is an important milestone along the way. So the sale was done by the receiver, Ernst & Young, which is overseeing the assets of the Olympic Village, which used to be known as kind of the Millennium Southeast False Creek development. But with the rebranding, the Village on False Creek, it's coming to life, and the sale of these properties is another step along the way. So that means about $45 million or close to that will end up in the city coffers, and we're just coming to the end of the fiscal year, so this is a very good financial injection for the city as it's dealing with its budget coming up. One of the aspects of the sale was the receiver had retained CBRE, which used to be known as CB Richard Ellis, a commercial real estate firm, to assist on the sale, and it paid this company $100,000, and then it was to have access to its databases, and then if it was going to exceed the offer from First Capital Realty, this company, CBRE, would be eligible for more money, up to $650,000. Well, it turned out no higher offer was obtained, so it's the $45 million offer. So $100,000 went to the real estate firm, even though it wasn't able to kind of exceed the offer. So that's one of the stories in real estate. Another story was the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver came out with statistics showing that the benchmark price, which is basically the kind of median price, or how they figure, they've got their own calculation, but the benchmark price for a home within the Greater Vancouver Real Estate Board is $603,000 now. And that's looking at everything from attached homes, detached homes, to apartments. Keep in mind that the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver does not include Surrey and Langley, which are more affordable regions of the Lower Mainland. That's part of the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. But $603,000 is still a lot of money for a home. In the meantime, what happened in November 2013 was there was a 37% increase in sales over November 2012. So we had more than 2,300 transactions within the area governed by the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, and that also includes Whistler and Seashelt and the Sunshine Coast. So that's a 37% increase, which sounds like a lot, but in 2012 the real estate market was extremely slow. We're still tracking just slightly under 2% below the 10-year average, but it looks like the volume of sales has gotten back to normal. And the prices are about 1% higher than they were a year ago. What's interesting about all of this is that it looks like the Lower Mainland real estate market has recovered to a certain extent from a pretty devastating blow inflicted by the finance minister, Jim Flaherty. Remember when the Conservatives came to power in 2006, they increased the amortization period, the maximum amortization period, to 40 years. So that meant you could borrow and schedule your repayments over a 40-year time frame. That was good news for first-time buyers because then they could have smaller payments because they could be extended over 40 years. But then the Conservatives worried that this was creating a housing bubble in the Lower Mainland real estate market and in other markets, including Toronto. So they shortened it in 2008 to 35 years. Then in 2011, they shortened the time frame again, so the maximum amortization period became 30 years. And then it was dropped again in June of 2012 to 25 years. And when it fell to 25 years, that had a severe impact on the Vancouver real estate market in particular, because we have such high prices here. So this move to reduce the maximum borrowing period to 25 years was designed by the federal government to primarily cool the housing market in Toronto, but it wasn't quite as hot in Vancouver. So that accounted for the crash in sales to a certain extent as you got into October and November of 2012. Well, now in 2013, 37% above the 2012 figure, so things are looking more positive for the Vancouver real estate market. Another story we had in the Georgia Strait involved one of the biggest developers in Vancouver, and that's Peter Wall. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Peter Wall a little while ago, who's the chairman of Wall Financial Corporation, and he's the person who built the One Wall Center, the big Sheraton Hotel in downtown Vancouver. It was the tallest building in the city until the Shangri-La Hotel was built later by Westbank. But Peter Wall has also played a significant role in the growth of arts venues in the Lower Mainland. So this month, what's opening is the York Theatre on Commercial Drive, and that was the subject of a cover story we had earlier this month in the Georgia Strait. And the York Theatre came about, it's a 100-year-old theatre, because the city, and particularly a former councillor named Jim Green, wanted to have this facility preserved, and it was dilapidated, it wasn't being used for a theatre. And Peter Wall is very good at arithmetic, so he said to the city, I can save that theatre, but it has to be worth my while. So they worked out a deal where the city granted Peter Wall 106,000 square feet of transferable density, so he can take the density from the York Theatre and move it on to one of his other projects, and then in return he would fix up the theatre. So it was a $13 million expenditure, and Vancouver got a new theatre. This wasn't the first time this was done. Many years ago in the 1990s, Peter Wall stepped forward to save the Stanley Theatre on Granville Street. So there, the federal government was willing to pay to fix it up. It was, again, a beaten-up old theatre that was not being used, and the provincial government was ready to fund it, but under the federal program, the city had to fund it, and the city didn't have the money. So Peter Wall provided the money in return for density. And at the time, it was somewhat controversial. The density was moved from the Stanley Theatre to the Wall Centre in downtown Vancouver, so he was able to build a higher tower. But it did save the Stanley Theatre, which is now in use by the Arts Club Theatre, and as well, the Stanley has helped revive that area of South Granville. So there's a lot of expectation that the same thing will be happening on Commercial Drive. Another project that Wall is involved in is new theatre space for Bard on the Beach and the Arts Club, and that's in the 100 block of West First Avenue. So that's on the southeast side of False Creek, and this is in connection with another Wall development. And if that's not enough, he also played a role in refurbishing the Orpheum Theatre and also providing a school for the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. And again, that was in return for density for a project called the Capitol Residences in downtown Vancouver, which replaced the old Capitol 6 Theatre. So the city is being creative in trying to bring about a more vibrant cultural life. And it's also coming at a time when we're losing other venues in the city, such as the Ridge Theatre and the Hollywood Theatre. There is a fight to save the Hollywood right now, but at the moment it looks like this historic theatre on West Broadway is going to be converted into a fitness center by the owner, Bonus Development. So there's a lot happening in real estate. Peter Wall, I asked him how many years he had been a developer. I thought maybe 40 years, 4 decades, and he looked at me and he smiled and he says, 57 years. And I said, 57 years you've been a developer? I said, when did you start? And it turned out he started developing property in this region when he was about 17 years old. So it's quite a story.